The Puritan Age, 1600 to 1660. Part-01. Literature. The literature of the 17th century may be divided into two periods: the Puritan Age or the Age of Milton, 1600 to 1660, which is further divided into the Jacobean and Caroline periods after the names of the rulers, James I and Charles I, who ruled from 1603 to 1625 and 1625 to 1649 respectively, and the Restoration period or the Age of Dryden, 1660 to 1700. Decline of the Renaissance spirit. The 17th century was marked by the decline of the Renaissance spirit, and the writers either imitated the great masters of Elizabethan period or followed new paths. We no longer find great imaginative writers of the stature of Shakespeare, Spenser and Sidney. There is a marked change in temperament which may be called essentially modern. New modern development. Though during the Elizabethan period, the new spirit of the Renaissance had broken away with the medieval times and started a new modern development. The modern spirit, in the fullest sense of the term, came into being. This spirit may be defined as the spirit of observation and of preoccupation with details, and a systematic analysis of facts, feelings, and ideas. In other words, it was the spirit of science popularized by such great men as Newton, Bacon, and Descartes. English language as a vehicle. In the field of literature, this spirit manifested itself in the form of criticism, which in England is the creation of the 17th century. During the 16th century, England expanded in all directions. In the 17th century, people took stock of what had been acquired. They also analyzed, classified, and systematized it. For the first time, the writers began using the English language as a vehicle for storing and conveying facts. New spirit of observation and analysis. One very important and significant feature of this new spirit of observation and analysis was the popularization of the art of biography, which was unknown during the 16th century. Thus, whereas we have no recorded information about the life of such an eminent dramatist as Shakespeare, in the 17th century many authors like Fuller and Aubrey laboriously collected and chronicled the smallest facts about the great men of their own day, or of the immediate past. Autobiography. Autobiography also came in the wake of biography, and later on keeping of diaries and writing of journals became popular. For example, Pepys' diary and Fox's journal. All these new literary developments were meant to meet the growing demand for analysis of the feelings and the intimate thoughts and sensations of real men and women. In drama, the portrayal of the foibles of the fashionable contemporary society took a prominent place. Puritan Age or the Age of Milton. The 17th century up to 1660 was dominated by Puritanism, and it may be called the Puritan Age or the Age of Milton. Who was the noblest representative of the Puritan spirit? Broadly speaking, the Puritan movement in literature may be considered as the second and greater Renaissance, marked by the rebirth of the moral nature of men which followed the intellectual awakening of Europe in the 15th and 16th centuries. Despotism. During the Renaissance period, despotism was still the order of the day, and in politics and religion unscrupulousness and fanaticism were rampant. The Puritan movement stood for liberty of the people from the shackles of the despotic ruler, as well as the introduction of morality and high ideals in politics. Thus it had two objects: personal righteousness and civil and religious liberty. In other words, it aimed at making men honest and free. The Puritans. Though during the Restoration period the Puritans began to be looked down upon as narrow-minded, gloomy dogmatists, who were against all sorts of recreations and amusements. In fact, they were not so. Moreover, though they were profoundly religious, they did not form a separate religious sect. It would be a grave travesty of facts If we call Milton and Cromwell, who fought for liberty of the people against the tyrannical rule of Charles I, as narrow-minded fanatics, they were the real champions of liberty and stood for toleration. The name Puritan was at first given to those who advocated certain changes in the form of worship of the Reformed English Church under Elizabeth. As King Charles I and his counselors, as well as some of the clergymen with Bishop Laud as their leader, were opposed to this movement. Puritanism, in course of time, became a national movement against the tyrannical rule of the king, and stood people, liberty and justice. When Charles I was defeated and beheaded in 1649, and Puritanism came out triumphant with the establishment of the Commonwealth under Cromwell, severe laws were passed. Many simple modes of recreation and amusement were banned, and an austere standard of living was imposed on an unwilling people. We should not forget that it was the same very Puritan who fought for liberty and justice, and who through self-discipline and austere way of living overthrew despotism and made the life and property of the people of England safe from the tyranny of rulers. Literature of the Puritan Age. In literature of the Puritan Age we find the same confusion as we find in religion and politics. The medieval standards of chivalry, the impossible loves and romances which we find in Spenser and Sidney, have completely disappeared, as there were no fixed literary standards. Imitations of older poets and exaggeration of the metaphysical poets replaced the original, dignified and highly imaginative compositions of the Elizabethan writers. Gloomy Age. The literary achievements of this so-called gloomy age are not of a high order, but it had the honor of producing one solitary master of verse, whose work would shed luster on any age or people, John Milton, who was the noblest and indomitable representative of the Puritan spirit, to which he gave a most lofty and enduring expression. Thank you.